Hello everyone, my name is Martin Diego, and I'm one of the front-end engineers working at Breazehome 1.0 Senior Project. So today we're going to go over how to install, run, and maintain our software so that it works correctly on everyone's system. So for the front end, we're using a pretty popular modern framework stack, which is Node.js, Angular 1.6, NPM, Bower, Gulp, and SCIS. The first thing you're going to need is Node.js. So navigate over to nodejs.org and download the installer that's right for your system depending on what operating system you're running. This shouldn't take more than a few minutes. Once you have Node.js installed, the rest is pretty simple. So Angular 1.6 doesn't really require any installation. It's a JavaScript framework, meaning it's just a folder with a bunch of JavaScript files. And I'm going to show you how we use Angular exactly later on. NPM and Bower are something that we really use a lot to manage all our JavaScript dependencies or packages. So let's see how we can get NPM. So you're going to want to open up your terminal. Make sure you have Node installed. And then in order to get NPM, it's just another Node package. So you're just going to want to run sudo npm install npm globally. I'm not going to install it here because I already have it installed on my system, but just run this command and it should just install a package smoothly. The G means it's installed all over your machine and not just the directory you're in. To get Bower, it's the same process, but replace npm with Bower. Once you have both these installed, now you have two package managers available across your entire system, and you can use it in any directory you want. One thing we use a lot here at Breazehome is Gulp. It runs a lot of the JavaScript dependency tasks for us, so we don't have to do all that busy work. To get Gulp, it's the same exact command, except you're typing in Gulp here, because you want Gulp to be installed globally in your machine using npm. Now finally for SCIS. SCIS is the only one that's a little different because it's not a Node package. It's not a JavaScript package. It's actually a Ruby gem. So to install that, you just do sudo gem install SCIS. That's going to install the SCIS Ruby gem on your computer. Now Windows users will have to install the Ruby command line PowerShell. So to check that out, you're going to want to go on the SCIS website, which is scislang.com. Click on install. And follow this procedure for Windows. You're going to want to download this, Ruby installer. So that's it for downloading and installing all the front-end dependencies. Next, we're going to see how we structure our project so you can get started as soon as possible. So now we're going to download and install all the files necessary to run the front-end application for breazehome.com. So navigate over to get.breazehome.com, which is our private repository for all our projects. Once in here, you're going to look for Breeze Desktop. This has all the front-end code that we need. So copy the HTTPS link and go to your terminal. Now wherever you'd like to host the project in your computer, you just make a directory, name it whatever you want, and then just cd into it and git clone and then paste the project URL in here. Now once you do that, it's going to download all the files necessary and put them in that local folder of yours. I've already done that and I've called it Breazehome. So let's get this folder and see what's inside. So at a glance, rather than going into every small detail, I'll go over the main files you need to know in order to run this program successfully. So Grunt is something we use a lot, and it runs all the tedious minutia tasks that is involved with front-end development, such as minifying our CSS files, concatenating all our JS files, uglifying our CSS files, making each Sass module into one CSS file, and adding vendor prefixes to CSS attributes, things like that. It also runs a local server using Compass. So you don't have to worry too much about working in this file, you just need to know that it runs JavaScript tasks for us in the background. So the heart of the application is inside app. So we want to really modularize all the files in our system so that we know exactly where things are. So as you can see here, we have an images folder which contains all the images across the entire site. We have the scripts folder which contains the controllers, dependencies, services, and the translation files for our site. So since we're using Angular, we have to follow our controller service view module. And inside here, you can find all the controllers for each of our views. Lib contains all our dependencies that are not Angular specific. Services contains all the services required by Angular, which is where we make all our HTTP requests. Translation maintains the English and Spanish JSON files, which are just JavaScript objects that have all the text on our site, since our site is going to be bilingual at one point. App.js is the main Angular module file. This is what aggregates all our different files into one module. It also sets the routes and states for our entire website. Styles is where we have all our modularized Sass files. So rather than have one big CSS file with a lot of possible merge conflicts in the future, we modularize it so that every component in our site has an individual Sass file. So for example, you can see cards as a recurring object across our entire system. So we made a cards.scss file so we can style all our card style attributes in one file. So whenever you see an object in our front end and you want to style it, just look for the right Sass module. Main.scs is sort of where all the magic happens, and this is where we do all our main imports. So you don't really render any of these Sass modules, you really just render main.scss, which requires all the individual Sass modules before it does anything. We also rely heavily on mixins and variables to maintain our theme throughout the entire site. Views is what holds all the HTML files for every individual page on our site, and we segregate that further into modals, which holds all the modals on our site. Finally, tests is where we have all our front-end tests used by Karma.js and Protractor.js to test our controllers, directives, and services. So now you have all the files cloned, installed, and you know sort of how the file structure works. Let's talk about how you can actually run this application locally on your computer. So navigate back to the directory you cloned the project into and just type grunt serve. So this is going to look at our grunt file that I mentioned earlier and look for the serve task, and it's going to run a local Compass server. It's also going to render all our Sass files into CSS so that the browser can actually run it. And we also tied it into live reload, meaning that every time you make a change to an HTML, JS, or CSS, or Sass file, it's going to automatically update the browser, meaning you don't have to keep going back and refreshing for every small change. So now that you have the front end running, let's say you wanted to make a change to a certain component, like the landing page. So as I mentioned earlier, if you wanted to make a change to a style, you already know that it's pretty simple to just go into App, Styles, and then find the right module that you need. A good guess is that the landing styles are going to be in landing.scss, and we wanted to keep that naming convention so that anybody can know where styles are. If you wanted to make a certain functionality change to a page, say the results page, you would just look for that specific controller. So go to scripts, controllers, and results.js, and this controller controls all the functionality for this one page. And finally, services is sort of the most important part of our site, which is where we modularize all our calls to our API. So for example, we have a service file for each endpoint in our backend. So users is a really big endpoint, which deals with authenticating, logging in, and getting information about a user. So we have a function returning an HTTP request promise for every single endpoint. We have things like log in the user, register the user, create a saved list for the user, set an authentication token, and so on. So whenever you need to deal with an API call or an HTTP request, just go to the services folder and find the right services module. So for example, if I wanted to see where we get all our properties, go to properties.js and look at the comments or function name. So for example, if you look at properties, it's probably going to be properties.getAll. And if you want to see how results actually calls these HTTP requests, go in there and look at our list of dependencies. You can see properties is one of them, meaning that now it knows about that service file that I mentioned earlier. And if we search for properties.getAll, you can see that this is where it actually gets all the properties. So now we're going to talk about how the API works in conjunction with the front end. So this is a quick front-end implementation of how our backend works. So our backend is running Django, which is built on Python, and it's a framework for creating RESTful APIs. So you can see the RESTful API endpoints here in dev.breazehome.com, which is our development API. Our production API is at api.breazehome.com and has all our fully tested features for the API. So if you click on any of these endpoints, you get to see what the GET request looks like for all of these. So for example, clicking on this would look at a GET request for all users. Now this is using our development database, but you can see exactly what the schema looks like for each user object. What's cool about the system is that you can actually search by an ID just by doing a simple GET request using a search query. So for example, I want to get the user with ID 84. It's as simple as just changing that URL and you get the user instance. Now if I wanted to make a put or a patch or even a delete request, you can do it straight from here. So you won't ever actually have to go and modify a table individually. If you ever wanted to see what all the property information consists of, go to the properties endpoint. This is going to return a list of all the properties that we have in our database at the moment. This is a lot of information, but pretty much you get returned a results array with an object for each property in our database. And these are all the fields for it. Finally, let's talk about how we can maintain and build upon this structure later on in the future, in case the next unit takes over wants to add a new controller, view, service, etc. So if you go to the README file in our Breeze desktop repo, scroll down to the bottom and where it talks about how we build and develop Breazehome, click on the UMIN docs. We use UMIN to generate all our routes, controllers, and services in a structurized manner so we don't have to create each file individually. So this is a pretty good documentation and I urge you to explore it and look at how you can create a factory, directive, and things like that. But just to give you a simple idea, since it's very powerful, if you wanted to create a new route called forgot password, it's as simple as just doing yo angular. We're creating a new route and we called it forgot password. So what this is going to do is it's going to generate a controller, SAS file, HTML file, and test file for it. What's good about this is that if every front-end developer does this, there won't ever have to be a question about where do I put what file. So now let's see the files that it actually created. So if you go into here, we could look at a new password reset.js controller file. There's a new password reset HTML file, and so on. So that's how we're going to be developing moving forward. We're going to be making all our new files using the yo generator. So that's it for Breazehome, and I really hope that the next team that takes this project forward can build upon this and add new and exciting controllers, functions, features, and an overall really good user experience to breazehome.com. Thanks.